Okay, well, it's called a $2 trillion infrastructure program. But the way I count the numbers, the infrastructure is only about 300 billion. The rest is really social programs, and they're phased in and so forth and so on. Now, I've seen a lot of infrastructure programs over time, and they don't really have any sort of immediate impact on the economy. First of all, you got to line up the state and local governments because they have to participate. You got to do your architectural and design work. You got to clear the environmental, and then you got to let the contracts. And so really, that's a very, very slow process. But then there's the other aspect of the proposed legislation is there's $2 trillion in corporate tax increases and upper income individuals. I want to tell you a lesson from history. I could give you lessons from Japan in the last 30 years, and Europe in the last 25 years, where we've tried similar packages of debt financing combined with tax increases, and they haven't worked well. But the most cogent example from the U.S. was in the 1930s. Now, I'm not saying that this is the 1930s. A lot of differences, but the policy response in the 30s should be remembered. The Great Depression had two components. One from 1929 to 1933, and then another component from 1935 to 1937. And really the economy, although we technically came out of the recession in 37, remained in pretty bad shape all the way up until the time that Germany invaded Poland. And we started selling goods we were non-combatant at that time. We got a benefit, from everybody fighting. But in the mid-1930s, the Roosevelt administration pushed through a massive corporate tax increase. Well, the corporations tried to raise prices, but they couldn't. And so what they did is they let go of their employees, and they cut back on capital spending. And that hurt the economy. Which is illustrative of you can lay taxes on the corporate sector and ask them to collect them, but the incidence of corporate taxes largely falls on the people, on households and individuals. So if the corporate tax increases go through, firms will raise prices if they can. I suspect they won't be able to. They will hire fewer people, or pay them less, or they'll shift operations overseas. In other words, the corporate tax increase is a contractionary event. And it probably,
at the exact moment when you're looking,
while the debate goes on, is actually beginning to stunt acceptance of future projects. Now, let's talk about the tax increases on upper income individuals. Now, we all know that a lot of folks did very well in the last several years, and income discrepancies have increased. I think that's a result of Federal Reserve policy. Whether that's true or not is debatable, but that's my view. Okay, so we tax the upper income. FDR actually taxed the upper income individuals in 3 successive stages. And in those cases, the upper income individuals did not really change their standard of living. They reduced their saving. Well, for the aggregate economy, physical investment in plant and equipment must equal saving out of income. Well, those upper income individuals do about 90% of our saving. So if you hit them, they have less saving, then we get less investment. And what ended up happening is the same thing as the corporate tax hike. The incident falls on the ordinary folks. And so the current fiscal programs have been transitorily beneficial, but that benefit is at its peak. It's going to fade very quickly. And the other packages that are in Congress are actually, in my view, contractionary.
You know, we talk about the contraction and people not having jobs. I think for a lot of people right now, that is almost inconceivable because every restaurant you go to, every store you go to, there are signs. I mean, I've never seen a sign before in a restaurant that says, now hiring, we'll hire on the spot, can start working today. But that's what's going on all around us. What do you think's going on with the labor market? Well,
it's just as I described it. There was a temporary upward shift in the demand curve from the $2.9 trillion of debt financed activity. And then the other factor was the deterioration in supply that arose out of the pandemic. Let me say that these supply side disruptions, which were currently evident, do not last very long because of the law of supply. The law of supply, which has never been disproved, says that as the price of a good or service goes up, producers will produce more. The only times that their supply disruptions have really lasted for a long time is when a cartel, like the oil monopoly, withholds products. Now, oil is an inelastic good, and so there are really not many good substitutes. But for most things, there are substitutes. For one of the substitutes that you can do is if you see the price shoot up, for example, of building materials or homes or so forth, is you can decide just to wait. See, does a 16% increase in prices in the last year, is that a good time to buy? Or do you step back and wait to assess the situation? So I think that everything that you're saying is absolutely correct. And that's what we have right now. Another thing that has exacerbated the supply, an unintended consequence of the federal legislation, is there were very significant unemployment supplements paid. And so you could, for a lot of people, they can earn more by collecting unemployment benefits rather than returning to work. Well, you collect the unemployment benefits and earn more, but you don't have to work. What are you going to do?
You're certainly not going to go to work, yeah.
But that process is changing because 21 of the states now, according to my count, including the big states of Texas and Florida, have said that they will no longer pay the supplemental benefits. So the federal legislation actually took people off the market, but in time that will pass. And so the intense price pressures that we're seeing today are a reflection of the transitory fiscal benefit and these supply side disruptions, which I believe will pass. But what will not pass is the record level of debt that we have, which is a major restraint on economic activity.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.